This is a video on how to create a collage in Photoshop. The first thing you're going to need to do is open up Photoshop. You'll come down here to your Windows display, scroll down to Adobe Photoshop and click Adobe Photoshop to open the program. You may need to log in and that may take a while, but you'll get in eventually. You'll get to this welcome screen. The first thing you need to do is to create a blank file. Come up to File, Open, File, New, and go to the Print tab up here. That'll give you your options for print sizes. Select Letter, and you'll have the option of selecting whatever color you like here from the pull down, or you can select any color really you want from the palette here. I'd suggest using just white for now, works well. And you can also probably choose landscape or portrait orientation. I'm going to choose landscape and click Create. This is the Photoshop workspace. Over here I have layers, which shows that I only have the blank sheet of white paper right now. And these are all my tools on the side here. I need to bring in some images. So I can either use images that I've downloaded already from the web that I've taken on my phone or camera and downloaded from OneDrive or wherever you store your photos. If I want to get images from the web, the easiest thing to do is open a web browser. I'm going to use Edge here. Enter in a search into Google and select images. In order to see how big one of these images is, you just need to hover over the image, select it, hover it over it, and it'll give you the size here. This is approximately 1200 by 1200 pixels, which will end up being about 4 by 4 inches. If I want to select this image, I suggest opening it in a new tab, right-clicking, and saving the image as. This will allow you to see what type of image it is. This is a JPEG image, which plays well with Photoshop. I'm going to change the name here to Dog. I've already saved this, but I'm going to save it again today, so we'll call this Dog 3. So I'm saving that to Downloads under this PC Downloads. I save it, go back to Photoshop. Easiest way to open that is File, Open, this PC, Downloads, and here we go, Dog. So I'm going to open that image. It will open in a new tab in Photoshop. So this is like a separate sheet of paper. I've cut out of a magazine, and here's my white background sheet. In order to get this image onto this sheet of paper, I need to select it by going Control-A, Control-C to copy it, and Control-V to paste it. So that'll paste this image onto the white sheet of paper. In order to move it around, I need to select my Move tool. And using my Move tool, I want to make sure I have Auto Select off and Show Transform Controls on. Transform Controls puts this wire bounding box around my image. It allows me to rotate and to slightly increase or decrease the size of the image, as well as move it around on the page. Once I've found where I want that image, I can either hit Return or hit the Commit Transform button, and that will have committed my return. You'll notice it's now become a new layer here. So here's my white sheet of paper. Here's the image that I'm putting on top. Sometimes you'll notice when you're searching for images, you may want to choose this image, for instance. You will right-click. It's a larger file size, or it has larger pixel dimensions. But when I right-click and open this image in a new tab, I find that when I go to save the image, I can't because it is a WebP file. That does not play well with Photoshop. So what I do instead is I come down here to my Windows and I'm going to select Snip and Sketch. Snip and Sketch, I come up here to click New, and this is Selective Screen Capture. So now I can come in here and I can click and drag the area that I want. It'll take a screenshot of that area, and now it'll allow me to save it. I come up here, I click on the Save button, I'll save that to downloads, and I'm going to title that Use Photo. I'll save it as a JPEG. Save there. I'm going to go back to Photoshop now, and I'm going to open that image just as I did with the other one. So here's how I do. I open, File, Open, use this dog photo, open it. It will open in its own tab as well. So here I have this image, same thing. Control A will select all of that image, Control C will copy it, and Control V will paste it. So Control A, Control C, and Control V. At this point, however, I'd like to be able to get rid of this white background so I don't have this dog kind of, I want to just have the dog. I prefer not to have the background image there. So I'm going to show you how to do that quite simply. You're going to be using one of your selection tools. Right now I have the whole image selected, so it's probably a good idea to deselect it by hitting Control D. Then you're going to come over here to the Magic Wand Object Selection and Quick Select tool, and you can do that by hitting the letter W. We're going to be using the Magic Wand tool right now. You'll notice that it's not displayed. If I want to display the Magic Wand tool, I hold down the right mouse button over the object, or sorry, the left mouse button over the tool that I want, and scroll down to Magic Wand tool. In this case, I'm going to have contiguous checked. That means the Magic Wand tool selects pixels based on the similarity of their color. So all these pixels are a very similar color. When I select up here, it will select all these pixels. It will not select these pixels. If I have contiguous turned off, it will select those pixels, but it may also select other pixels that are part of the animal, and I don't want to get rid of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select contiguous. I'm going to select these pixels up here, and I hold down the Shift key and I make further selections. So that selects in here, and this will select here. What I've done now is I've selected the white area around the dog, when actually what I want to select is the dog. So I need to invert my selection. I can do that simply by coming up to Select, Inverse, or I can hit Control-Shift-I. That will now choose the dog instead of the background. So similar to copying the whole image, I copy this, Control-C, I can come back here, go Control-V, and you might say, where is it? And now it's created a new layer up here. I go to my Move tool as I've done before, but notice now when I move this around, I don't have the white background around it. So that's kind of nice not to have that background there. Another thing that you may want to do, or you might be required to do for the project, depending on what the project is, you may be required to make a perfect circle. Again, this image is selected, but we're going to deselect it by hitting Control D. And we are going to then come over here, and we're going to hover over the Marquee tool. Now the Marquee tool has only two options. Typically it is set as the rectangular marquee tool, but we're going to choose the elliptical marquee tool. So again, left click, hold down, and select elliptical marquee tool. This tool makes a odd elliptical round shape, but if I want to make a perfect circle, I can hold down Shift and Alt and stretch to make my circle bigger. So that's a simple selection. I can now move that circle around. And when I'm happy with where I have it, I simply copy what I've got there, Control C, come back here, Control V, and that will paste the image onto the blank sheet of paper. Again, using the Move tool, I can move it around. Now, something to make this unique that I may want to do is I'm going to add a stroke or an outline to this image. So I make sure that I've selected the correct layer. When you're using the Move tool, make sure that you have Show Transform Controls on, but turn off Auto Select so that you're not selecting the wrong layer. To create the stroke, come up to Edit, Stroke, and that will allow you to create any width outline you want. I'd suggest going with 10 pixels. We're going to do a black outline right now, and we're going to put that on the outside of my selection. Click OK, and there's your black outline. Next, we want to add a drop shadow to this to make it look like it's above the white sheet of paper. Go to Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow. You can see there's a slight drop shadow there. And what I like to do is I would increase my distance just a little bit. That's how far above the paper your image is. You can play around with the spread and the size. That looks great. That is a layer style. We've applied that. One of the next things you're going to need to do is you're going to need to do some type mask letters. So we're going to show you how to do those. We're going to use the same image again, but typically you'd be using a different image. So open up a new image. In this case, we're using an old one. I'll use this one again here. I want to deselect by hitting Control D so that I have just this sheet of paper here. You're going to come down to your type tool and you're going to hold down the left mouse key to see, and you should have a horizontal type mask tool. If you don't, you can also just click on these three dots here, and that should give you the option for that tool. What you're going to do is come up here. This will be the size of the type mask. I would suggest going with 144 point typeface. One thing you'll also want to do is come up to Image and Image Size. And you're going to make sure that this is 300 pixels per inch, but make sure that resample is turned off. So I've selected that. Ooh. You'll notice now I've started typing here, but we'll get rid of this again. Control D, a little mistake there. So click on your image and you'll see that this typeface is probably a little bit too large. So hit Escape and you may want to change this back to say 72 is a good size. Click on your image. That's a much better size. So I'm going to hit backspace to be able to start typing again, and I'll type my name out. So here we go. There's your name. If you wish to move this around, what you do is you'll see as I move my cursor, now I've got the move tool. I can move this around. I can click and move this around, but I only get one shot at it. And as soon as I let go, it should create a selection. If it doesn't, you can come up here and you can click on the check mark. You now have a selection. Hit Control C to copy that. Go back to your collage here and Control V. That will now bring in these letters. Use the move tool to move it around to where you want it. And I'd suggest putting a stroke on this. So we're going to come up here to Edit, Stroke. Same thing, you may want to make the stroke a little bit smaller, maybe make it 5 pixels on this. There we go. And there you go, you've now got a stroke around your name. And that should get you started on working on your Photoshop collage.